Have you ever practiced something for days or possibly even weeks and really just stopped and asked yourself, why am I not learning this any faster? Or maybe you just decided that this sort of thing takes a long time. After all, practice makes perfect, right? Well, actually, researchers have found that practice alone doesn't always lead to success. Instead, experts suggest that the correct kind of practice is what leads us to optimal learning and improving of our skills. In fact, studies have shown that the correct kind of practice amounts for 80% of the difference between the elite performers and amateur performers. Hi there friends, welcome back to the channel where we focus on productivity, self-improvement, and making the best possible versions of ourselves. Dr. Erickson's research is the basis for the 10,000 hour rule, which I'm sure you've heard about. Basically, it says that it takes 10 years or 10,000 hours of deliberate practice to achieve an expert level of performance in any given domain. Those are some really big numbers, which is why I missed the essential part of that equation, which is deliberate practice. Meaning that there's a specific type of practice that facilitates the achievement of expert level performance. And then there's the other kind of practice, which we are all too familiar with, mindless practice. This is something that we've all observed whether in others or in ourselves, and it usually takes the form of one of three of these different options. The broken record method, which is where we simply repeat something over and over and over. The same tennis serve, the same piano melody, same repetition, same progression, and you just do it over and over and over. And at first it looks like practice, but on closer examination, it's simply mindless repetition. The autopilot method. This is where you basically switch into autopilot and just coast. It's where you practice your piece from beginning to end. You recite your poem 3 times. You practice for, this amount of time. And then you have the hybrid method, which is kind of a mixture of both of the above, which is what I tend to fall into the most. Say I'm playing a piano piece. It basically goes, I play it until I find a place that I don't like how it sounded, and I repeat that little spot over and over and over and over until I finally get it to the way I like it to sound. And then I play a little bit farther until I find another spot and repeat again and again and again. Now you may be asking yourself, hey, what's the big deal? What's wrong with practicing like that? So let's take a look at the 3 main problems with practicing like that. Number 1, it's a waste of time. First of all, very little productive learning actually happens when we practice this way. That's why we can practice something for hours, days, weeks, months, years, and not really grow in that area. Worse yet, this kind of practice facilitates undesirable habits and errors, which cause more inconsistency and ultimately leads to more and more practice. Number 2, it makes you less confident. When you practice mindlessly, it builds a sense of uncertainty deep down. Like a part of you knows that you just don't know how to produce the results that you're actually looking for. Even with high success rates in difficult skill sets, there's still a level of uncertainty that just won't go away. When I was researching this, I recognized this immediately in myself. Because I can know a piano piece. Even though I know the piece and I know that I can play it, deep down there's a strong level of uncertainty and hesitation. Number 3, it is mind-numbingly dull. Worst of all, mindless practice is a chore. We've all had those well-meaning parents or teachers that say, practice X number of times or for a certain amount of time. We need more specific results-oriented goals, such as, play this guitar piece until it sounds like XYZ. This allows us to have a place of arrival and achievement. As a famous violinist once said, practice doesn't make perfect. Practice makes permanent. Now, if I did my job right, hopefully all that sounds terrible and awful, and you're asking yourself, okay, what's the alternative here? The alternative is deliberate or mindful practice, which is essentially a systematic and high-structured activity, which, for lack of a better word, is more scientific. For this, we leave the mindless repetition and we adopt a more active, thoughtful process where we relentlessly seek out solutions for clearly defined problems. Sounds all very fancy, doesn't it? Deliberate practice is often slower and it involves very precise repetition of a specific skill set. Say I wanted to become a more proficient portrait photographer, for example. I would spend 30 to 60 minutes practicing a specific aspect of that, such as lighting changes or the rule of thirds, for example. Deliberate practice often involves active monitoring of one's performance, which could be looking over previous work and asking questions that poke and prod to see how it could be improved. Is this photo good? Is it bad? Why? Why not? How can I fix that or make it better next time? And so on and so forth. If this sounds like a lot of work, that's because it actually is, which is why a lot of people don't choose to practice this way. You stop, analyze what went wrong, why it happened, and then figure out how to produce a different outcome next time. Now, if you're anything like me, you're really hoping that there's a way to streamline this process, and thankfully there is. So I'm gonna go over 5 different points that will help accelerate this process. Number 1, focus is everything. Resolve to keep your practice sessions limited to a time duration that allows you to stay focused. This could be anything as short as 10 to 20 minutes or 30 to 60 minutes. Number 2, timing is everything. Keep track of throughout the day when you feel like you have the most energy and try to practice in those periods of time. For me, this is right around like 8 or 9 in the morning, which is usually when I'm hardcore binging on like my favorite productivity book. Try to practice during these natural mental clarity moments throughout your day. Number 3, don't trust your memory. Use a planner, Notion, notebook, whatever you need to plan out your practice sessions. This will help you keep more on track with your goals and also help you to keep record of what you're learning along the way. The secret to getting in the flow of practicing is to continuously be searching and seeking for the clarity of intention. Have a crystal clear view of where you've been and where you want to go, and be relentless in your search to get there. Number 4, smarter, not harder. Now, in some cases, when things aren't going correctly, that does mean we need to practice more. However, be wary of stubbornly persisting with a strategy that clearly is not working. So stop, step back, and brainstorm for a day or two to come up with a solution. And when you think of them, write them down and then come back and begin experimenting with them. Number 5, stay on target with the problem-solving model. When you're practicing something, it's extremely easy to slip back in to that mindless practice mode. So using the problem-solving model is a good way to keep you on track with that. Here are the 6 steps of the problem-solving model. Number 1 is define the problem. Number 2 is analyze the problem. Number 3, identify possible solutions. Number 4, test those possible solutions to see which one is best. Number 5, implement the best solution. And number 6, monitor that implementation. You know what? Let's add a bonus to this whole streamlining process. So number 6 is mental practice. Hands-on is generally what's linked to learning a new skill, but believe it or not, that actually leaves out a massive portion or tool that you can use to increase your skills, and that skill is mental practice. There was a study in 2008 that's super interesting. I'll try to link it down below if I remember, but basically they studied a whole bunch of medical students, analyzed their behavior and their practice and everything. Basically what they found is that the medical students that implemented mental practice, they majorly outperformed the ones that relied on physical practice only and textbook resources. There was another fascinating study on this where they hooked up machines to skiers and then had them lay there and mentally practice their route that they were going to run like professional skiers. And what they found was that the muscles activated in exactly the same way as when they were actually doing the route. And so they found that when they actually went to physically do that activity, they were like a step ahead because their muscle memory was already being built up simply from the mental practice that they performed. It doesn't matter if you're trying to improve your writing ability or your golf swing or your marketing skills. Like, time is our most valuable commodity. So if you're gonna be practicing, you should at least be doing it correctly. Really quickly, just want to let you guys know that a video like this usually takes around 10 to 15 hours to produce. If you want to help me further my goal of becoming a full-time YouTuber, simply leaving a like or a comment goes a really long ways. And also letting you know, like, I'm not just pulling this stuff out of my mind. There's a ton of research that happens before I condense all that information and give it to you guys. And I try to reference all of the sources that I pull from down below in the description. So if you want to study this more, those sources go way more in depth. Obviously, I can't cover all of it here. So feel completely free to go check all those out, read up on them, research yourself. It is quite powerful. With that being said, gentlemen, stay creative, and I'll see you in the next video.